on this episode of Jack and Work Friends. I'm interviewing my friend Janera. We actually went to high school together, so this is like another high school classmate I'm having on the podcast. And then we went to University of Michigan together. And now Janera is a process engineer at Nike, living in Beaverton, Oregon, and she's been there for 6 years. Is that right?
Yeah, 6 years now.
You might be able to make that 10 year what is it with when you're at Nike for 10 years?
Ooh, the sabbatical, I know. Yeah, it's becoming more and more tempting as the years move on. I'm like, ooh, okay, this is getting closer than I thought.
Dude, their HR team did a good job with that strategy to keep retention.
They did. They really did.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah, you first started as kind of like on the main like manufacturing line, right? But since then you switched
Yeah, so I
positions.
can talk a little bit about that.
Cool.
Yeah, so I actually interned at Nike the summer after my junior year at Michigan, and I was in what they call ARMI or Air Manufacturing Innovation. I was there as an operations intern. And so ARMI is essentially a manufacturing facility where here within the United States, in two locations, we actually create Nike airsoles or Nike airbags that go into Nike Air product. I went back full time as a process engineer there, and yeah, I was responsible for essentially making sure that I was in charge of two production lines as an engineer, making sure that any technical issues that were happening, I would provide live engineering support if the production staff couldn't figure it out. And then also working on continuous improvement projects to make sure that you're reducing as much downtime as possible. And then later on, I worked on the actual product development of an airbag that later on went into the Olympic 2024 basketball shoe. So that was my first role at Nike. I was there for almost 3 years. And then now I've been at what we call the Bowerman Footwear Lab, which is our on campus, essentially product creation center. And I've been there as a process engineer working on what we call tooling in footwear. And that is essentially like midsoles, outsoles, all of those like lower components of the shoe that an athlete steps on or runs on. There's a lot of chemical engineering, material science that kind of goes on behind that. And so that is what I've been doing for the last 3 years.
No, thanks. Yeah, that was way better intro and detail than I gave. That's actually a good transition though, because I think you might be like one of the only people I know that, the work you do actually involves physical product. And I thought about it, like most people are like in banking and consulting, in tech, and it's all like software or it's like this non-tangible, right? Um,
Mhm.
do you ever feel like like, does it actually make, well, I guess like, yeah, what's the biggest difference of being in like a job that actually involves creating physical product compared to probably like most of the people we went to school with do not do that.
Right. No, exactly. I'm definitely in a very odd space in that regard. I think the biggest thing that's like super telling of that is that I started my role in 2019 September at RMI, which I mentioned, and then 6 months later, the pandemic hit. And while most people that we know of was working from home, I was actually still had
Oh
to go
yeah.
in since I was providing manufacturing support. And then there was a while where we were also creating a PPE for the pandemic. And so that was a very different reality that I had compared to like everyone else that I had gone to school with was able to work from home.
Yeah.
It's been a really good first phase of my career to really see because it's so hard to have an actual intuition for how manufacturing works and all of the logistics that go into it and how complicated it really is. So I think I definitely wouldn't have it any other way since I learned so much. And the other thing was that it really solidified my engineering skills since I was out there fixing manufacturing lines. I knew that nobody could tell me I was not an engineer after the last few roles I've had. So it was very validating in that way. And again, something that like I think really helps you kind of earn your stripes where people are like, oh, you've actually been in manufacturing, you really understand how product development happens.
Yeah, I like what you said about like earning your stripes because I do feel like every industry, um, I feel like every industry you do need to earn your stripes, right? Like investment banking, when you first start,
Hmm.
you work like
Hmm.
terrible hours. Um, when you're like a junior engineer somewhere, you kind of have like the worst of it. And then as you get more senior, like you can empathize better with the juniors, and you just have like hands-on
Hmm.
experience and you have the know-how. Um, so yeah, I feel like that's a common theme, and it's just funny to reflect on because in a way, I do always like relate it back to like hazing in a frat. It's like we were never part of that, but like yeah, that's kind of like what happens, right? It's like a natural part. Um, and I don't know about you, like I imagine that like going through that experience, like you're probably more closely like you feel closer with other people that have gone through that experience, right? I'm sure, you talking with
Hmm.
other people who have gone through the
Hmm.
same program as you, like you guys can relate to a lot of the same like difficulties and challenges, and it's kind of like a bonding experience there.
Yeah. Well, and I think you cut out a little bit, but I think something that I also what I just heard from you made me think of is that in my first job, um, being in that environment with my coworkers, I just created such an incredible bond with my teammates there because it was so in person and we were solving issues on the line together. You really form a very specific kind of bond and a very specific form of trust so that, like, a typical desk job, like, you cannot build
Yeah.
with somebody else. So I really view that group. When I had moved out to Portland, they were really like, I know there's so much controversy about calling like your teammates your family and everything, but for me, like my coworkers really became my actual family because there was just so much trust there and I really enjoyed them. And it was just a really great camaraderie. So the amount of fulfilling relationships I gained from that first role are something that I feel like you cannot experience in your typical desk day job, right? So that was really cool. And it was also a really interesting space since there was a lot of diversity on the engineering space. I had so many Latino mentors, which was so, I feel like, unheard of. And so there, in many ways, it was like a really incredible first job that gave me so much validity, as well as just knowledge that like you cannot gain from just like being on your laptop all day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, for sure. I had a thought. I feel like you just said a lot of things that like just provoked like a lot of thoughts, and now I can't really think of it. What were they? Honestly, I feel like I'm gonna think of all of them at
It left
once,
you
but
speechless.
yeah, honestly, you gave me too much to think about. I guess the first thing that popped into my head, the first thing that popped into my head is no, I totally agree. There's something about like being in a workspace physically. I mean, like, I think there's a reason why more companies now are doing like return to office. Is because like being there in person does matter.
Right. No, I think exactly. I think manufacturing also taught me like it's very much I think quite often when we have a laptop style job, you often have your project and you can work on that project whenever, as long as it's done by this like specific deadline. But oftentimes when you're working like with your hands, either in manufacturing or right now I'm more in like the prototyping space, it's more so like, no, this needs to be done now, or the line is down right now at this moment. So there's a lot less planning involved that can happen with your day. And at the same time, you're also trying to get your projects done around that.
Yeah.
And for me, being such like a perfectionist and I love to have control of like my time and how things went down, it was really important for me to really learn a bit more about that ambiguity and being able to really like roll with the punches and like getting to things when you get to them.
The next thing, like we kind of talked about a little bit beforehand about like AI. One thing that's kind of I just kind of popped into my head was that like AI in a way is like automating a lot of what I would say is like white collar jobs like
Mm,
writing things, like coming up with ideas, and it's like automation on that front. But I think like when people think of automation, one of the first things they probably think of is like in manufacturing, right? Like people have like, I don't know, when we were kids, they
hmm.
were even talking about like, oh, there's like robots in like the car factories and things. So I guess like two-part question. One, do you use like AI to automate like certain parts, certain jobs that you do in your work? And two, How big is like robotics and just like automation in terms of like actual manufacturing, the physical part of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think your first question about like using AI in like at least like the manufacturing or like hands-on kind of space. I would say I haven't seen it a ton. Again, right now I'm more in the prototyping side of things. Um, but I could definitely see a lot more of the implementation in like the robotics that you mentioned. So we definitely had robotics in the manufacturing space that I was in. And I think there was a very good balance between like we still need operators on the line, but there are some things that are so intricate and so repetitive that like one robot could completely do. And so the interesting thing about footwear as well is that footwear in and of itself is extremely difficult to automate. There is a lot of craft that goes into footwear. It really involves, you know, sewing and taking something 2D into something 3D and something that is wearable and fashionable, but at the same time functional so that the athlete is either like running or kicking a ball with it. So it proves to be very difficult to automate versus something that is a very repetitive once you're really dealing with like materials and fabrics. Very difficult to kind of get robotics involved there. So I guess for job security, I'm feeling pretty good on that end. But in other spaces for AI, I would say like maybe in the day to day, like the white collar side that you're talking about, I don't know if we've gotten to that point yet. And I think that's kind of opening up the discussion on AI. I think AI has been, you know, we hear so much about these articles of like, oh, AI is here now, like these jobs will be gone by next year. But the one thing that like I'm really curious about and I wonder about is how quick and how accelerated of a pace the adoption of AI will actually be because AI costs a lot of money, first of all, right? So like not every single space, not nonprofits, not public schools will be able to implement it in even if it does exist, could they even afford it, right? Would be one aspect of it. And then I think the actual development. And I think the third part of it being the infrastructures that exist currently in technology right now may not be able to withstand AI, right? Like we have some really clunky systems still out there that I don't know if AI would be able to get in there if like those systems can't even speak to each other in and of themselves. And now add on AI trying to like get the, you know, trying to get that information from all those systems. So I think that's my biggest thing that I'm like curious about AI is I think it is here, I think it's coming, but I don't know if it's as rapid of an accelerated adoption that we're in for, at least like within the next year or two.
Yeah, no, those are all super valid points. And like I was telling you, a lot of the people I've like kind of interviewed recently, like none of them, I mean, they all work in big companies, right? And none of them are like super integrated with AI. I guess some of the questions that you had, I feel like I can actually answer some of them. I mean, the affordability piece, um, I think it's fair to question if like individuals can afford it, but I think ChatGPT and some of these AI tools are like $20 a month. And so if you're genuinely
Mm,
using it every day, it's not the most unaffordable thing. And
hmm
even if it is pretty unaffordable for like individuals, for companies, they can give their employees access to these AI tools for way cheaper. Like the user doesn't actually have to pay for
hmm
it, and instead of $20 per head, they might be able to get a discounted rate, say like 12 or $13 per seat. So the
hmm
affordability, I'm like less concerned about. I think.
Do you think like, you know, when people talk about like, oh, AI could replace teachers, you know, and it's like, well, could a school system actually afford AI, right, to do that?
I mean, if a school, I think the teachers thing is like very, that exam, I don't think AI is there. Like it could even
hmm
try to do
hmm
that. But if you're saying, like for, I guess, a more contained example, like let's say a school system wants to use AI to like write their curriculum, just as an example, I do think a school can afford that. I don't think a school could, like,
Yeah.
I don't think that AI can replace teachers, but yeah, I think for
Hmm.
small contained examples, I think schools can afford to use AI to do things like, I don't know, if they ever wanted to like build like a chatbot on the website to answer to people wanted to ask questions about
Hmm.
like certain policies, I feel like they can implement AI to like do things like that.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and they can
Hmm.
do it affordably. And the second piece, I guess, for the adoption, um, is yeah, I think I've seen a common trend that like the places that can adopt it the fastest are like smaller places. There's just like less policies, less history of a tool being used for like years and years and
Mm-hmm.
years. And I feel like there's almost like two, I guess there's like three ways I've kind of thought about like how AI actually makes its way into like companies. First way is like if you're really new and you don't have that many employees and it's really easy to switch out your tools, say like your company wants to switch from Outlook to like a new email client. Or like what happened, I don't know about you, like when I first started at JP Morgan, I was using Skype, and then by the time I left, we were using Teams. So that's like one way like
Hmm.
a company can switch out of a product, but for big companies, it's obviously way harder. There's like way more pushback and things you have to
Right.
go through. So that's the first thing is like smaller companies will, of course, they can be more agile with like adopting AI tools. The second piece is like big companies like say like Slack. I don't know if you use Slack, but when we first started using, or
Hmm.
when I first started using Slack in like college, like there was no AI features, but I think Slack is a
Hmm.
company that kind of dedicated more resources to building AI features. So that's another thing that can happen at big companies and drive adoption. Is like the tools you use made it a commitment to start implementing AI things. And then the last thing
Hmm.
I'll say, the last way like AI makes its way into companies is I almost think of them as like a USB adapter is like do you know like Salesforce is like the CRM?
Hmm.
Do you ever use it?
No.
Okay. Well, basically, Salesforce has been around, I think, since like early 2000s, maybe even before that. And there's whole companies that are just like like they build software products that make it easier to use Salesforce, which is kind of wild because it means like
Okay. Yeah.
Salesforce is so clunky that, and it's clunky because it's old because like it was a really good product and it continues to be like very
Hmm.
functional. But I will not, I don't think it has like the most modern features or UI or like AI features yet.
Hmm.
But there's whole companies and software products built on top of making Salesforce easier to use. And so I think that's another way is like at Nike, I don't know like what's another type of like old software, but like if you guys are using like what do people use? Hmm, I don't know, I guess like the Skype example, like there could like Nike could buy a product that like makes that summarizes like Skype calls and then uses like AI features to like send everyone the transcript. So there are like kind of I
Hmm.
call them like adapters that make it easier to implement like AI on top of like old products. So yeah, there's a
Hmm.
path moving forward, I would say, for adoption.
Yeah. No, exactly. And I think that like what you're alluding to is kind of like this in between because I think what we've been, at least what I was talking about was like we hear all these like very alarmist, like, oh, AI is here, it's going to replace your job and like all these hundreds of jobs are going to disappear. Versus like at least like what you're talking about and like what I'm kind of alluding to is more of like a trying to use it or it seems to be more in practice being more of an aid at the moment. Um, but I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how quick it actually gets to the like more alarmist headlines that we've been hearing of.
Yeah, no, the alarmist thing, it's, I mean, one, I always think that like it's in the news's best interest to have these very
Hmm.
alarmist like headlines because that's what gets clicks. So yeah, I definitely
Hmm.
like, and it's funny because I still don't know where like what I believe in terms of like is all publicity good publicity, right? Like if if like the CEO of Nike, not that he would, or not that I don't even know who the CEO is, but not that they would, but if they said something like Nike is like, if he just like bashes Adidas, if they just bash Adidas, like it gets headlines and I'm sure it gets like, it's good like marketing or like press, but does that actually like benefit Nike in the long term. And Nike's a bad example because it's already so well known, but like if a no-name company gets a lot of attention because they have these like very ostentatious like comments, is that like a good thing? And I'm not really sure. Um, but yeah, I do think the news is like quite sensationalist. And what I've even noticed in terms of AI is
Hmm.
that like I think when AI first started, there were companies that said like we can replace software engineers. Like we like don't even hire any because like we'll just
Hmm.
replace them. But then now the newest
Hmm.
products are always like, hey, we help the engineers be more productive. So it's already like a walk back
Right,
of like what was already said like a
right,
year ago.
right. And I think it's interesting because it's like, I think even if AI comes through, I mean, it is, but if AI comes through in a way that like they make it sound like, oh, we won't need programmers or oh, we won't need graphic designers because now we have AI, but like I think you will still absolutely need those people to be able to speak the language to then use AI to get a product to what you need it to be. You know, you can't just go to like, oh, we don't need any programmers now at all because I'm someone who has no program experience and I have AI. Like, I still cannot create this incredible product. But if I was a programmer with like the basic knowledge and basic like terminology now, and actually know how it is used, then we can create a product in unison. But I think a lot of what we've been hearing is very much like, oh, we don't need programmers, graphic designers, nothing. We don't need them anymore at all. I don't think that's true because, sure, I guess I could input something into AI and be like, make me this cool landscape scene. But then how can I use features and other ways to tell it like how to edit and modify them, you know? And
Yeah.
that's a very basic example, but you still need to be able to speak to it to make those adjustments to the product.
Yeah, no, I really like your example because I think a lot of products promise that they can make like an everyday person like they can allow them to like build a website or be like a really good artist. But I think part of like I could tell like when I made these images, right? I just said like, oh, like create this image. And I think it's like pretty good. But since I'm not an artist, like to get something really, really good, like this is fine for like this lo-fi, podcast. But to get like an image that like, Nike would feel comfortable like releasing in an ad, like this would probably not cut it, right? They need something like way better. In order to get that like level of detail, you need, even if an artist is using AI, they need to be able to like use the right language, like you were saying, like they have words that I don't even know, like
Mhm.
hue and contrast and things like that. That I have like I can't tell you what contrast is kind of. But no, I totally agree.
No, and or
They
I
have the
think
language.
like I've seen like like Photoshop and Adobe like showing all their AI features, and that's like really cool. But if I don't know how to use Photoshop to begin with, and I don't know the difference between all the layers and
Yeah,
all the different settings that you can change, how far am I going to get with that AI, you know?
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm definitely not like I don't like buy like the way that it's gonna replace everyone in years, but I do think I will say I do think it will get more integrated into like even corporate that are known for being like more slower adopting companies. Like I think it'll
Hmm.
make its way because one thing I've just seen is like people just get really excited when they hear AI, I think right now, and it like causes investors
Yeah.
to like give money and things like that. So if for nothing else, like I think companies will just start saying they're building AI and then they'll like put like some small like chatbot or something, and then like
Right.
the stock
Right.
price will go up by a little bit or something like that. Yeah.
No, yeah, the amount of things that were previously a chat box, but now we're like renamed like
Oh
AI
yeah.
tool. I'm like, this is not AI.
Yeah. Yeah. So wait, I was actually curious about this since like you kind of work with design. I feel like there is like a pushback on AI that like it's like plagiarizing like artists' work. And now like everyone thinks that they can just get these like free images and like I guess I kind of did that in these little images, but I guess like I do start to think about like one, I bet the artists like normally artist attitudes probably are not like very pro AI. And then two, like what is like the right what is the right way to like not plagiarize, not take advantage of like other people's work, but at the same time, this is like incredibly useful to like probably would have taken me forever to like make that image if I couldn't do it at all.
Yeah, no, I think that is a really good question. I like personally, as a non-artistic person, I definitely could not speak to it, but I do think that there are some plagiaristic issues at hand. And also like, I it's kind of like this, this funny meme where it's like, why am I still doing the labor, but like AI is doing all the like human arts now? Like, how is technology even helping us at this point? But I think it's really interesting, and I think that is also a huge issue, right, with technology, is that quite often technology will break the rules before there even are any rules to be placed, right? Because technology will always advance more um, than the groundwork for what ethics will be in that government or society. So I don't know. I think that's a really good question. I do think that there is something to be said for like when AI is taking from like a very specific style of an artist. I think there were a lot of issues with that happening, where a lot of artists were like, "This is exactly my style," and this AI took it. Um, and I think also like I've seen some discussions about like where is AI pulling from its like data, right?
Yeah.
Data and what is it being like trained off of? I think the ethics of all that is really interesting. Um, so I'm not really sure. And I think it feels like right now we're in a state where like things will be deregulated even more so, which kind of puts it in a bit of a concern for like the ethics of this technology for sure.
I'm gonna tell you what I'm rooting for, but I know it's definitely not gonna happen.
Okay.
Okay, what I'm rooting for is there's just like lawsuits everywhere. Like people having like
Okay.
very concrete proof that AI is stealing like their work, their writing style, their art style, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Um, and then OpenAI, like Anthropic, all these like AI companies, they basically have to like I don't know, they have to pause their work because they're just like dealing with these lawsuits, and then they have to make like they have to find like training data that's like totally open, has no like IP infringement or anything like that. Um,
Hmm.
and then everything kind of goes back to the way it was before AI in a way. Because like part of me is
Okay.
like, I know AI, it makes you more productive and it makes you more like optimal, like you
Hmm.
can do things way faster. But then I'm like, I don't like live my life in a way that I try to optimize for productivity. Like I try to live
Hmm.
my life in a way that hopefully like I'm doing like meaningful things and I'm like also kind of optimizing for like happiness and finding things that are meaningful to me in terms of like relationships, work, and all that. And
Hmm.
AI doesn't really add to any of that personally for me. Like,
That's a great point. Yeah.
so yeah, so like, and then also like I do think like if without AI, then I think craftsmanship is easier. It's like it's more valued without AI, right? Like if I couldn't generate these
Hmm.
images at like on a whim, then artists can like get paid more for their work. And I don't know, like maybe this is
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
hypocritical, but I genuinely believe that like I feel like overall happiness and it's better for the artists if like their craftsmanship and their work is valued and AI sort of cheapens that by making it super accessible
Right.
to like
Absolutely.
do all those things, which is more
Right.
productive for like our GDP, our country, because now we can produce more things. But I'm like, I don't know if like production, like producing is like the end goal.
Yeah. No, and I think it's, I mean, kind of back to your, I guess your main question being of like what, the state of AI right now. I would say like AI, how it has most helped me has been like in job searches, like for example, like trying to tailor like my resume, right? Like, okay, this is the job description. What are specific things in my resume I should highlight? Or like really asking like ChatGPT as like a career coach of some sorts, like um what are some kind of questions I could potentially expect from this interview based off of like this job
Mm,
description. And so that's been places where like I think it's been most useful in terms of like crafting like maybe I don't know if it's story, but like also trying to think of like um I like narratives, but I think that's also like what is so scary to me is that I am so glad that we were a part of that generation in high school and college where we actually wrote our essays. Um, in terms of now looking back and being like, wow, if I had this tool at my disposal and all my classmates were using it, and I never actually learned how to write a proper essay, I think like writing and critical thinking is a humongous part of like just critical, again, intelligence, right? That I think it's a huge disservice that we're doing to our younger generations if they're not actually practicing that writing element. I
yeah.
don't know if you've like thought about that.
Well, I like the way you use it, right? At least in your resume example, because it means like you did like you tried to do like the creative process, the critical thinking first, and like drafting up your resume, and then you ask for feedback, which I think is a really good use because it means like you're still practicing that muscle of like creativity. But then of course it's good to get like a second opinion, and I feel like AI might be like it's a really accessible way instead of like having your mom or having somebody like give you feedback, which might
Hmm.
take longer, which you still might do
Right.
after you iterate with like this like AI revision.
Hmm.
But yeah, I agree. Like it does, I think, get to a dangerous state if like you don't even try that first attempt. Like you never practice that muscle of like writing, like yeah, like having like good, concise, like clear writing. If you never practice that, if you don't practice being creative, like then you're just always at like the mercy of these like AI companies and the way they want you to think.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's like definitely like use it wisely for sure. I feel like that's definitely the overall takeaway of like AI. It's like it can be really good, but definitely like use it wisely. And for
Hmm.
kids, I bet it's
I think
tough
that
because
will
like
be my
it's
main
easy.
concern.
Yeah.
Right, because like you can't blame anyone when you're a kid and you're already stressed and you're trying to do all this other stuff that you're like, well, everyone else is, so why won't I? But it's just, I think it's going to have some like really unfortunate consequences on just your critical reasoning because if you can't form an essay, like how are you forming, arguments when you like just discuss with your friends or people or anything? So I think that will be the biggest unfortunate side of AI in a few years.
Yeah, I would love to know. Maybe honestly, maybe we should like have a call with Mark, our old math teacher in college, because like I wonder if people if they get stuck on like a math problem. Back then, we would like spend hours doing like 10 problems. We'd spend like 2 hours
Yes.
doing 10 math problems in a classroom. But now when people get stuck, I wonder if they could just like feed it into ChatGPT and it gives them an answer.
No, I'm sure, like, because those math problem sets took forever. Like, we would be working on those for hours. And to your point, now you can actually put in Chat GPT and it'll actually solve it. Is like, that's a whole other experience. I can't even imagine that.
Wait, did you read? Wait, do you remember that post you sent me with the Apple research paper?
With the Apple research paper,
Yeah, on AI. Okay, well, you sent it to me on Instagram.
maybe, wait, remind me.
Okay, well, it's basically
Oh, is it that it's not? Yeah, remind me.
yeah, I was it was basically just about how like AI is really good at problems that it was trained on, but when it comes to new problems, it doesn't actually think and the performance drops a lot. So I feel like Mark is
Oh,
like
right. Yeah.
was always really creative with his problems, his math, the way he like framed his math problems.
Hmm.
So I am pretty curious to know if like
Hmm.
AI could actually solve those like new types of problems. Maybe
That would
not.
be interesting, actually.
Maybe
Yeah,
not.
maybe not. It was kind of funny that like yeah the article was like essentially just gets kind of lazy and then it doesn't really, even if you like help it out a bit more and I'm like okay yeah same.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really learning from human behavior, I guess. Um, cool. I think the last like work related topic I wanted to talk about is diversity when it comes to the workplace. I think when I first wrote the question, like it was like, I guess like, do you feel like it's improving and things like that? But then I look around like our landscape and obviously like if politics is any signal or proxy of like what the general like American thinks, then I don't know if we've actually like gotten to like a more improved state. Um, but I will say that like it's very small sample size, but I went to Maria's like residency graduation last weekend, like where the fourth year residents graduated. And like the doctors were like, oh, they made this joke that I thought was funny. And it was like, I know we're not supposed to talk about diversity, but here's our like diversity award or something like that. So it's like, it's still in the hands of the people, I would say, to like decide.
Mhm.
But if like voting trends and is like any proxy for like, I think it is a proxy for like the attitudes of the American public. Like I don't know if like diversity and like how people feel about it is any better than like when we were at school, like 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a very interesting time to kind of discuss for sure. And I think that's a really great question. Like, since I have always been on this side of it, right, and always been very involved, it would be really interesting to know how like maybe people who are more on the fringe of it now feel about it compared to 6 years ago, or if it has had the opposite effect now, where it's like, okay, we're doubling down even more on it because we see how necessary it is. So, yeah, I don't know. It's been, I think it's been a very interesting, what are we in month six, I guess, since things have changed around here. And I think the first few months were very much like many organizations, schools were very much on their toes. Many were giving in even before they even had to. But I think now that there have been a lot of organizations and entities starting to stand up and say like, no, this is unconstitutional, you can't really do this. Now you're having a lot more I think inspired advocates for actually doubling down on what this is and what it means. And so I think it's been very interesting to see kind of like, I think in like the March timeframe there's a lot of fear, a lot of people giving in before they needed to, but now there's been so many acts of um somebody, I don't want to say rebellion, but acts of like, no, we're actually going to stand up for what we believe in. And so I think we're on a really good path. We're kind of going back to where we're at. But I think you brought up something really beautiful, which was that it, in the end, it really is in the hands of the people. And to the people, it still matters a lot, right? So whether an organization or an entity says, no, we can't, or a government says, no, you're not doing that anymore, the day to day and the circles that people inhabit, and the communities that came from like the want and desire to keep promoting diversity, are still alive and well and still moving forward and still doing things. So I think that's what I've seen. Like anything that was a part of that space is a part of the diversity space. Like I have not seen, die down or be retracted. If anything, it continues moving forward, maybe in more, I don't want to say sneaky ways, but like less obvious, as it was before. But it still continues to be moving forward in other capacities. So I really loved what you said about that. Like it really does stay in the hands of the people and that will always be there. I don't think it's something that just because someone says like, no, we're no longer doing this, that people pretend like it never existed. The state of like diversity and everything. I think what this year has really proven is that it's not just diversity because, oh, it's a charitable thing to do, but the amount of companies that went away from diversity and have actually lost money this year, I think Target being a great example, I think has also proven to the point of that it's not just charity, it's also just a really good business decision making to invest in diversity and to be aware of if you're going to be a corporate entity, a global corporate entity, then you better be able to serve the entire world and not just one small country, with your product.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I guess like it's definitely related to diversity, but I guess in terms of love on the spectrum, it's more of like neurodiversity. You put me onto this show.
Hmm.
I mean, I think the first half of I watched the first half of the first season, and I couldn't really get into it. And then I just watched the latest season because like you and a lot of people I knew were like talking about it. Um, and I I don't want to say love-hate relationship with it, but I have like a love, like uncomfortable relationship with it, I would say, because the show does make me
Okay.
uncomfortable, I will say. And I think part of it is because like I put myself too much into like their shoes. And so
Hmm.
like one example that made me really uncomfortable was like, do you remember the character? Oh yeah, I'll like I don't know if you remember the characters' names, but Tyler, who's like the very southern gentleman,
Oh,
is
the DJ. Yes.
yeah, he's just making out with Madison in front of her parents. And that just made me really uncomfortable. And like I'm like, I don't think I can watch another episode. Um, so like stuff like that definitely, or like when Connor is like talking to his family and he's just being like super dramatic, and then I just put myself like, what if I was in that room? I would just be uncomfortable because he's just like, I don't want to say being mean to his mom, but like, I don't know, I would never talk to my mom that way. But also
There's
like,
some frustration.
yeah,
Hmm.
but also that they're like, you know, I think, I mean, how they're like their traits are. Maybe they're just more frank and more direct. Um, but yeah, I guess it makes me uncomfortable sometimes, but obviously it
It's a very intimate, it's a very super intimate situation. And I think it's, and which is what I also really, I do like about it is that it's such a wholesome take on a love show, like a love dating show, because I think quite often, The Bachelor, Love Island, all these others, like people are there and they're fully aware the cameras are on and
yeah,
everything they do is in response to that,
yeah,
right? Whether for better or for worse. Well, I feel like Love on the Spectrum is much more wholesome and natural, but to your point, it's like such an intimate moment where like yeah, you're literally in people's kitchens with their families like venting out their frustrations or yeah, Tyler and Madison making out in the kitchen. And I think that's also part of it too, though, is like for many of these characters, this is their first experience with love. And I think for so many of us, our first experiences with love were cringy.
oh my
They just
gosh, yeah,
weren't on TV.
yeah,
So I
100%.
think I understand why it can be very uncomfy because, yeah, I don't know. I think of like my middle school, like first relationship. That was so freaking cringe. Like, no. Or even high school was like, there was a lot that, like, I feel like now if I were to go on TV and fall in love, now like I can compose
Oh,
myself and not be, yeah, should I go on The
yeah, yeah.
Bachelor?
I
No.
was like, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I feel like there's yeah, I agree with you. It's a super vulnerable show that I think at first can be a little cringe, but I just love how wholesome it is. Super wholesome. And I think also to kind of relive that like your first love kind of feeling and to see someone else going that through that for like the first time is also something very raw that you don't see often on TV.
No, 100%. And yeah, like the thing I love about the show is kind of what you said, just like how genuine it is. I would never ever accuse anyone on the show for being fake or playing it up for the camera.
Hmm.
That is just not something that's even on my radar. But part of the uncomfortable also is like I agree like that just inexperience anyone's first experience with like love and dating is gonna be very cringy, and so I'll give it that. But two, the other thing that makes me uncomfortable is like they're so genuine that I get very sad like when things don't work out. I feel extra
Hmm.
bad for like them just
Yeah.
because like they had like no ulterior motives. They like just wanted to find like
Hmm.
love for their partner. Um, yeah, but
No,
that being said,
exactly.
some of them are just so direct with being like, hey, like after one day, like no, I don't want to see you again. I just want to be friends. I'm like, dang, wow, what a what a
And
action.
we need to learn from that. Yeah, no, exactly. Because it's kind of like, yeah, I respect that. Like I think the communication in that show was very direct to your point, which I think like if more of the dating world was like that, there would be like less hard feelings, versus the like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I'm gonna go on another date and hope this like simmers down, like, But yeah, it is kind of, I think it is a different way of kind of viewing the love. Um, but I really, yeah, I liked it. I felt like I also learned a lot. The characters were incredible. My favorite, my absolute favorite is Perry, the tea
The
princess.
sea princess, yeah.
She is so funny. She is like a whole, like, she just has the greatest brand ever because, and she's not even trying, like, she's just straight up herself 100% of the time. And I really admire that.
Wait, I asked Maria this while we were watching the show, but I was like, hypothetically, if I was into something, like I was super into something, say I was super into yeah, I guess like trains, right? And I just brought it up in every single conversation. Would you just get like super annoyed, or like do you think like yeah, like would that be a deal breaker almost? I forgot exactly what she said. I think she's diplomatic and said no, it wouldn't be a deal breaker. But I did think about that. Like, what if your
She said
partner was
no.
someone who just always brought up this thing that they really liked in every conversation?
I feel like, it would be one of those things where it's like, that's just who they are, And like, so yeah, I don't know. I guess it would have to depend on like what it is. But if it was Perry, I'd be like, yeah, this makes sense because you love trains. And I would love to hear you talk about trains because she's just so passionate about it. Like to the point where I was like, man, should I ride the Max more often here now? Like she made it really cool.
Dude, I've always
I need to
been
ditch my car.
yeah, yeah. I've always just been of the stance that like anyone who loves anything to like the nth degree, I support them. Like as long as it's not
Yes.
like destructive to others or themselves. Like you could if you're into like I don't know, like if you're just super into cardboard, like you know a lot of facts about cardboard and you make videos about cardboard, I would support them 100%. I would even watch some of their videos because I'm like, I think I could listen to anybody talk about anything if they're like passionate and they're like
Right.
have enough love for it.
Yeah, like what do like if you're into cardboard, I want to know like what is it about cardboard? Like why am I looking at cardboard differently than you, right?
Yeah.
Like lay it on me, make the case for why I need to frame every piece of cardboard I find on the side of the walk or like the road.
Yeah, I started doing this thing. I had this thought at work. Um, so I feel like we've talked a little bit about AI, and I feel like in terms of a lot of my coworkers, I'm sort of like a AI contrarian. Like I don't use it as much, and like
Hmm.
I'll like sometimes talk bad about it. And then I like caught myself at one point, like in the office, where I was like, am I like just too negative on too many things? Like I got kind of self-conscious about like, do I have like too many
Yeah.
hot takes on too many things? And
You're
now
like,
like
am I a hater?
yeah, now they're like, oh, there goes Jack. He's on the soapbox, like hating on something. But then I thought
Yeah.
about it more, and I'm like, I feel like if nobody had like hot takes, then like the office and like everyday life would be pretty boring. So then I justified it. I'm
Hmm.
like, you know what?
Hmm.
Like, I'm gonna try not to. I try not to talk about it too much. Like Perry, I'm not at her level of confidence. But I will
Yeah.
say, like, I think it's cool that people have their like hot takes that have like things they're really passionate about and like, willing to talk.
Right. No, exactly. I think maybe that's also part of my like identity crisis is like, is there anything I'm like obsessed with? Like, not really. Like I'm very much a generalist. And maybe that's why like I find someone like Perry so cool because I'm like, wow, she found her thing. Like that is her thing. I am nowhere near like passionate about any single thing like that. I have interests, but like to that point, like I really respect it when people know their passions because half the time I'm like, I have no idea what I even want to do with my life. I'm like, do I care about things? Like it feels like I don't sometimes. And I'm, yeah, to your point, like just a hater sometimes. But yeah, I think we need a little bit of that balance. I think haters are pretty great. I think haters, again, it has to be balanced because you can't be like a Debbie Downer. Like that's different. Being a hater and being a Debbie Downer are two different things. But I think being a hater has to be like within the confines of like, I'm trying to prevent something bad from happening and I'm going to tell you all these like downsides that could happen. But not a hater in the like, oh, you love trains and I'm gonna hate trains now. Like that's not cool being a hater like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think of it like I heard this quote from like one of my like this podcaster I listen to, but he always says this phrase like you can be mean he says you can be mean if you're funny. And like obviously like
Yeah,
I don't take that literally, like you shouldn't be mean to people, but I get what he's saying, right? Like you can be hater, you can
yeah.
have these like contrary views if you're like funny and also like ideally like kind of informed about it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
in a way, being a hater just means that you love, like if I'm a hater on AI, it just means that I love not using AI. So in a way, yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
just a big supporter.
I think it also it's like a we need to view it more as like maybe not being a hater, but like having a critical lens.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what it
I
is.
want to point one more observation about the show that this one actually it doesn't make me uncomfortable, but I feel like a lot of the people on the show they like a lot of them are either like cut it off on the first date, like like sorry, I'm just not that interested, or they're just all in. Where the second date, they're just talking about marriage. Like Perry on her second
Mm.
date, she's like, I think she sees like somewhat like a couple taking wedding pictures, and she's like to Tina, like, do you think that'll be us someday? And I'm like, yo,
Yeah.
that's crazy to throw out on the second
I love that because remember Perry was like, or she was like, I've never kissed a girl before, and then she like
oh my
looks at
gosh.
Tina.
Yeah, Tina's like, me neither. And then nothing happens. You know why I liked that scene is because I saw a lot of myself in that moment.
Yeah. Hey, shoot
Not to
your
get too
shot, you know?
detailed, but yeah.
We all know why we're here. It's a date.
Well said.
No, but yeah, there was a little bit of that, like, yeah, either a no or a full on yes. And to be fair though, like, I wonder if that comes down to also like your style of how you fall in love, because I don't know personally, like, some people are like, oh, I met my partner and it took a few dates and then I liked them. For me personally, I feel like I'm kind of in the other boat of what you're talking about, where it's like, I feel like in the first date, I will know if I'm into you or I'm not. Like, there's no like growing on to me. And I don't know, it could come down to like how, that just everybody's a little different in that way, maybe.
Yeah.
But I could see how, like, yeah, on that show, it kind of did seem to be a bit of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've talked to friends about this where it's like, I feel like your first date is almost like binary. Like, it's either like, yes, I could see myself like spending more time with this person, or no. Like, yes, I'm kind of like, I'm attracted to this person or not. And then from there, if
Hmm.
it's a yes, I think like then for most people, I think like you can like grow, right? Like your love can grow. You're like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, your affection for this person can grow. But yeah, I do think there needs to be like at least the first date, there needs to be like an immediate like yeah, either binary, just like yes or no. Like, am I attracted to this person? Can I see
Hmm.
myself
Hmm.
spending time like liking them? Or no, I don't find this person attractive, or like I just find them annoying, don't want to spend more time with them. So, but that's what I find funny about this show is like they're when they make that binary decision, like instead of like growing after the yes, they're just like all in. Like I think Connor, no, sorry, Tyler and Madison, they start calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend on the second date, and Tyler is always buying elaborate gifts. And that's another thing I noticed about the show. They're really into gift giving,
Yeah.
super into gift giving.
Okay, when Tyler bought her an American Girl doll, I was like, that's insane. Like those dolls are like
He
$100.
buys Pandora like every day. I think this man's
Like
roll.
clearly I'm going out with the wrong people.
You gotta be going out with DJs. I think that's what
Yeah.
you learn from this show. It's like you gotta go out with
Southern
DJs.
Gentlemen DJs. That's where it's at, clearly. Okay, they were an incredible match made. I was really happy for them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay. Honestly, I haven't watched after they did that makeout session. I didn't watch the next episode. That kind of I haven't watched it in a while. That made me really uncomfortable because like it's not that they did it. It's just that like they did it once and then they did it another time, and like the dad's just like there.
That was really funny. Well, and then he was like, "I'm gonna have to bring out the hose on y'all," or something like that.
Yeah,
I think the dad he put his boundary. He started setting his boundary, and I think they got better after that.
I'll say, yeah, I respect the dad, Madison's dad, because it seemed like he was just happy that like Madison like found someone that she's really into, and Tyler seemed like a good dude.
Hmm.
So props to the dad for that.
Hmm.
And also, I feel like maybe I just res I like this just because like I'm a dude, but I feel like Adon and his relationship with his dad is like the most wholesome thing.
I really love that relationship too. Yeah, that was a really good relationship. And I liked how that I thought that was also an interesting like showcasing of like, yeah, sometimes people just have, you know, completely different wants in life. And I think it how it went down in the show was good. And it was one of those where it's like, sometimes that's just what it comes down to. But I really did love the showcasing of him and his dad.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's all my thoughts on Love on
I'm
the
also
Spectrum.
going to do a plug.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a plug on Love on the Spectrum Australia. Um, I don't know. I don't think as much. I think you'll be fine in terms of the cringiness, but I really like that show too. There's two couples there that were my favorite.
Hmm. Okay, maybe. I think I have one more episode on like season three. I am
Okay,
gonna
try to
get to
finish it and then okay, get to it. You can fast forward through the making out.
it. I don't know if you use Chromecast. I have a complaint with Chromecast is that they make it really hard to like.
I've never used that.
Oh, okay. Well, they just make it hard to fast forward on like Netflix and stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, dang. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. You have anything else?
No, I really loved my little avatar though with the Mexico City Angel of Independence in the background. So thanks for that little detail.
Oh yeah, of course. I know my audience. I know.
What's yours? Are you just in a generic forest?
Yeah, I didn't tell it to. I just had a picture of me hiking, and I just told it to make it like Studio Ghibli style.
Nice.
Um, One thing that
Cute.
kind of bums me out about like making the pictures is I think they're really cute, but then like Studio Ghibli, like the people, like the main person, like the main head of that studio was like, this is a bastardization of like the art that my team makes. And then it like bummed me out. I'm like, ah, like no, I definitely think more critically of my use toward it, of like AI to generate pictures. But
Mm-hmm.
in the end, I don't know. Cuteness kind of wins. Not gonna lie.
Cuteness wins.
No, I
No, yeah, I feel that. Yeah, he was very anti that.
do you know Waymo? Do they have that important?
We don't, but I've been to SF sometimes, so I know what it is. I have yet to get into one though.
Okay, I'm convinced that one of the biggest reasons why people feel comfortable riding Waymo is because Waymo is such a cute name. Like, oh look, there's a Waymo. Look at that Waymo. Like literally, me and Maria will be
Yeah.
walking, be like, hey, look a Waymo, just because like it's such a cute little name. I guarantee you, if it was called like Megatron, like look at that Megatron, I'd be like, no, don't put me on a Megatron. Like, do not do that. Do not ride one.
Right. I think that is, I could believe that as being part of the marketing in there. I believe that. That's
Yeah.
a good point.
That's why one of my thesis. Yeah, maybe I'll write a paper on it. Cuteness
Write your paper on it. Yeah. Do a whole master's thesis on that.
one. Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks for hopping on, and yeah, maybe we'll do another one if I keep doing these podcasts.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me. This was super fun.